She turned her phone off and disconnect from the world. Ooh, y'all, if this ain't reminding me of Whitney Houston and Robyn Crawford, oh my goodness. It's always a bullet in the wings, waiting for her straight lover to return.
I don't hear nobody out there. Hold it down.
James. After her 1986 stint in rehab, Phyllis had managed to go a year or so without drinking alcohol. When Martha David came on the scene at the end of 1987, Phyllis was still on the wagon. I asked her early on if it bothered her when I drank alcohol around her, Martha recalled. At first she said no, and then maybe about a week later she said yes. It did bother her. I said, fine, I won't drink around you. And for a long time I didn't, even when she started drinking again. I thought that in some way it was at least not encouraging her, so I wouldn't drink alcohol. Without seriously addressing her mental health issues, it was inevitable that Phyllis would start drinking again. As Phyllis resumed drinking, Martha did what she could to discourage her. Once we went across the street and into a liquor store on a break from the recording studio. She didn't have her wallet with her, and I wanted to buy something. She wanted to borrow money from me, and I wouldn't lend it to her to buy liquor. I was saying, if you want to do it, you're on your own. More often than not, Martha was unsuccessful in her efforts to keep Phyllis off booze. Phyllis was good at finding a way to do whatever she wanted, and drinking was no exception. Another time, we went to Japan, and I got to her room ahead of her. And I grabbed the minibar and ran it down the hall and put it in someone else's room. Then she walked in with bottles that she had brought downstairs. Slowly, as she resumed her love affair with liquor, Phyllis gradually began adding booger sugar and pills into the mix. Phyllis's brother, Michael, was at the apartment once when she received a drug delivery. I always knew when food was coming because she'd give me the money. Phyllis was a generous tipper. Those delivery guys loved her. They knew when they came to the apartment, 33C, they'd be taken care of. But I knew this was not that kind of delivery, just by the way it was going down. Phyllis waited anxiously, pacing about the apartment. When the man delivering the package arrived at the door, Phyllis made the trade-off without inviting him in. Then she quickly closed herself off in her tiny kitchen. Minutes later, she retreated to her bedroom, once again closing the door. Michael had no doubt that Phyllis was freebasing booger sugar. That was the first time that it hit me that she had a very serious problem, he recalled. I felt so helpless. I just felt so bad. According to Phyllis's friend and sometimes assistant, Julia Aponte, Phyllis said it was her ex-husband, Larry Alexander, that had first introduced her to booger sugar. In the late 70s and early 80s, when it was fashionable for booger sugar to be served on silver dishes at special parties. Yeah, that sound like that got daggone P. Diddy parties, man. Look, I done been to parties before where I've seen people get down, and I knew that wasn't the place for me. You know, I mean, shout to La Vista to you if that's what you want to do, and that's what you need to have you a good time. I'm not here to judge you, okay? Because like I said, I've had my vices. Certain addictions are very, very expensive. And throughout my life, I've had a Chanel addiction that would, take me up and through. So I would rather spend my money on that. Not anymore. But there was a time where I had a very, very serious Chanel addiction. Phyllis had occasionally snorted booger sugar, but booger sugar was something she preferred to do privately. It was not a party for her, and Phyllis didn't invite anyone to share the experience. In fact, even if other staffers were aware of what she was doing, she actually addressed it with very few people. Julia, however, was one person she confided in. That was her escape, Julia said. Phyllis used it as an escape. I don't think she enjoyed it. I don't know. Hey, when I'm in the throes of my food addiction, baby, I'm telling you, I go to the Publix, grab me some of that lactose intolerant milk, 2%, okay? And some of them golden Oreo cookies that taste like cake. And then, child, I got the nerves to buy the thin ones. And I can wear 1 or 2 rows of them out, along with that lactose intolerant milk. Now, I hate myself in the end, but when I'm going through that addiction, there's nothing that can stop me. I'm going to get effing high, Phyllis would tell Julia when something would upset her greatly. It just makes me not feel. For Phyllis, whose emotions ran rampant and whose pain threatened at times to engulf her, not feeling was the ultimate goal. Not feeling, not fearing, not having to worry or wonder about anything. Phyllis fought to be in control at all times. But while freebasing, Phyllis could just let go and let the snow drift over her and wash her cares away. Phyllis was already debilitated by her mental illness, by the manic depression that made her tired mind work overtime. She had great difficulty sleeping. Her mind would not shut down, no matter how badly her body needed the rest. But treating a debilitating condition with a debilitating substance was no solution. Martha was aware of Phyllis's booger sugar uses, though Phyllis would never use it in front of her. Most of the time, it wasn't something that was present during our relationship. At one point, I realized that she'd started again, and it did start to interfere with our relationship because she would go off by herself. She only wanted to be by herself, and she didn't want to be around anybody. She turned her phone off and disconnect from the world. Ooh, y'all, if this ain't reminding me of Whitney Houston and Robyn Crawford, oh my goodness. It's always a bulldagger waiting in the wings, waiting for her straight lover to return. Though her options were limited, Martha did what she could to dissuade Phyllis from her drug usage. But she felt the wisest approach was to tread lightly, never put together an intervention or threaten to leave if she didn't stop. But I was always very discouraging. Some people might call it enabling, helping her keep it together, Martha continued. But I never knew what else there was to do. I felt like I was there to take care of her. And short of threatening to leave or putting together an intervention, I, day to day, did whatever I thought was best in my own way. So anyway, it's about Christmas time. It's time for Phyllis to go back to rehab. Bitch, you are out of control. You need to find yourself. She can't go just yet because she has some dates that she has to do. The dates are over. Bitch, it's time for you to get on that plane and go straight to rehab. Finally, on Monday, January 21st, 1991, Phyllis had fulfilled all her outstanding commitments and was ready for rehab. She had bought 8 cartons of Marlboro Lights 100s to get her through her stay. Phyllis flew directly from D.C. to Naples and checked herself in without incident. On February 20th, the day after she had received her degree of sobriety, Phyllis left the Willow and flew alone to Chicago. Her travel manager and all-around assistant, Bill Schultz, met her in Chicago's Midway Airport and escorted her to the Lenox House Hotel. Initially, Phyllis made Schultz promise to take her to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that night. But once at the Lenox house, plans changed. Phyllis got out of her clothes and into bed, then ordered up every dessert listed on the Lenox house room service menu. Baby. Ooh, the throes of addiction, baby. Phyllis performed at Chicago's Civic Opera House the next night, and afterward asked Schultz to accompany her to a local club to see dance diva Martha Wash, one half of the Weather Girls, the group responsible for the monster hit. According to all sources, the streets the place to go, 'cause tonight for the first time it's raining men. Martha had a predominantly gay following. Phyllis highly enjoyed herself at the show and soon had slipped backstage. It was there that Schultz found her sometime later eating fried chicken and just 36 hours out of rehab, sipping champagne. She was crazy, recalled Martha with a laugh. I was surprised to see her, but glad, because I don't get a whole lot of entertainers that come to my shows. So it's very much always a surprise when I see somebody that I know. It was fun. She was just, I guess, happy to be out. She was having a good time. She said she was doing fine. While in Chicago, Phyllis couldn't help but indulge herself. She stayed in town for a week following the Opera House concert, going on daily shopping binges and quickly running through a healthy portion of the earnings from the show. An interesting item among her purchases was 2/5 of vodka. Phyllis was officially off the wagon already. Phyllis flew directly back to Florida from Chicago, but this time it was a recording studio rather than a rehab program that called her to the Sunshine State. Phyllis met Nick Martinelli in Miami, where the two resumed cutting tracks for the, by now, long-awaited Living All Alone follow-up. Word traveled all the way to Japan that even after a month in rehab, Phyllis had not stopped drinking. Phyllis's alcoholism had long been a point of contention in her relationship with Dante, and the strain was now growing unbearable. It created difficulties, obviously, said Dante. We had conversations about it, some calm, some not so calm. And to her credit, a piece of the difficulty was she could function very well, quite well. She was a functioning alcoholic when we were together, and that would sometimes be her answer. So it was at times quite difficult. That was a piece of the puzzle of at some point why it became just too difficult for me to remain. When he first became aware of her problems, Dante had fooled himself into believing that he could fix them. I used to think that love solved all problems. Baby, it don't. It don't, girl. It don't. Now he had to face the fact that he was only human. I had a tendency to want to be the knight in shining armor, so I could see Phyllis's pain and see all the things that she could be that she wasn't, or that she wanted to be but wouldn't let herself be. And for some period of time, I wanted to help her do that. And that's not always the best reason for a relationship. Eventually, feeling crushed under the pressure, Dante called an end to the relationship. It was a combination of things. At some point, it gets to be very draining, very difficult, and love gets pushed into the corner when you've got to deal with all the other negativity and demons and issues and things like that. I guess at some point I just realized that I couldn't continue on the way the relationship was, and I didn't see that there was anything that was going to change it. At some point I just said, I can't do this anymore. On June 25th, 1991, 5 long years after her first album for Philadelphia International Records came out, its follow-up, Prime of My Life, was finally released.
Hollywood, lovely wife and life, baby carry. No other stars that come, the sense of course, but it is in Hollywood.